You might have heard of Copilot for Power BI, an AI assistant capable of giving recommendations and automate tasks inside Power BI. For example, it can suggest pages for a report, create those pages by itself, document measures, and even write DAX. So those are all quite impressive capabilities. However, if you look on the documentation, you will notice that this is only available on the F64 or P1 SKU, and you cannot use any of this on a trial SKU. So if you further look into the pricing for an F64 SKU for the UK, that's about £8,000 a month. So that's quite a steep cost, not available for small and medium companies, which will be a barrier for adoption in the near future. You can, however, implement a low-cost alternative with equally interesting capabilities, and that's what we'll cover in this video. So the first thing we have to do is to start working with Power BI Desktop project. So if you're not using this already, it is a preview feature which you will have to enable on Power BI Desktop. So this is how to do it. And as soon as you do that, you'll have a third option when you save in the Power BI file, the PBIP. And this allows you to save the Power BI file as a folder, and inside that folder there is a bunch of text files that you can investigate. So if I show you what that looks like here on my machine for a demo report, you have access to all the tables with measures inside, you have a model, you have relationships, so a lot of metadata that we can make good use of. As for the artificial intelligence, we have two choices, the familiar ChatGPT or the API, and these are essentially the same thing. But for the purpose of this demo, we'll go with the API approach. That just makes it more convenient and seamlessly integrates with VS Code. So I have already registered an account, and once you do that, you'll have to fund it. Now, you could try to use the free APIs, but I would not recommend that because you'll hit the limits very, very quickly, and the models available to you are very limited. And by models, I mean the versions of the AI, so to speak. So if you get the funded account, you'll be able to use GPT-4o, which is the most powerful and cheapest model from OpenAI. So for this example, I simply funded my account with $5, and at the end of all these tests, I still have plenty of credits left. So it's really an inexpensive way to try AI in Power BI. So once you have your accounts, and you have funded that account, you'll want to come here to API keys, create a new secret key, give it a name, and simply click on Create Secret Key. So I'm not gonna do it here because I already have one, and you want to be careful not passing that key to anyone else. This is specific for your account. And once you close this dialog here, you're not going to be able to get it again. So make sure you secure or paste that key on a secure location you can access for the next step. Finally, we'll want to come to VS Code and get an extension called CodeGPT. So if you come here to extensions, search for that, you'll be able to see the respective pages. I have already installed it, but in your case, if you haven't, it's going to ask you to install, which takes only a few seconds. So after that, you can come to CodeGPT, and to configure it, make sure you have the provider selected as OpenAI, GPT-4o, again, the cheapest and most powerful model, and it's going to ask you for an API key, which is simply the key you have created in the previous step. So this is the demo report we will be working with, but before you go ahead, let me say two important things. First of all, make sure you make a copy of the report you're going to edit. So this approach, even though it does work, it's not officially supported by Microsoft. So if we do something wrong, we are in our own, basically. And number two, on VS Code, make sure on the settings that you have the length of response set to the maximum. So this here is the maximum amount of tokens on the input and output. Putting it to the maximum means the response is not going to be truncated, which is quite important. And even if the worst case scenario comes to pass and all these tokens are used, you're only talking about 2 cents. So the cost is quite minimal. So let's have a look at the first use case for AI. So if we look here at the model view, you can see it is a very familiar scenario where the model has grown, many developers have worked on this report, and there's no organization whatsoever. It starts to become very difficult to see what tables relate to what tables, what are the relationships. So this is not good practice. We like to organize this. So to do something about it, we can come here to the project folder. And there's two main folders, one for reports, one for semantic model. If you look at the semantic model, there's a file called diagram layout.json. So this lists all the tables you can see on this diagram with their X and Y positions, as you can see here. So let's try something. Let's try the following prompts. If you come to 𝗏GPT and type this prompt, which you will have on the article linked to in the video description, and then you have this JSON code as well in the prompts. So we're saying is revise the code to get all dimension tables of the star schema at the top and all the fact tables at the bottom. Anything else, put it on the right hand side. We don't want to see it. Right, so this takes a few seconds, and as you can see, we get a JSON response back. And to see what's going to happen, you have an option here to insert the code. So the code on the right hand side has been replaced. I'm going to save this file by using Control S. And to see the effect, we have to open up Power BI again. And if we come to the model view, there you have it. All the dimensions in the top, the fact tables following them, and to the right-hand side of the view, we have all other tables, auxiliary tables that we don't want to see. So really neat, and if you have a big model, that's a very quick way to organize it. The next use case has to do with organizing measures. So as you can see here on the right, the very common scenario where there's lots of measures by multiple developers and they have not been organized properly into folders, which can make finding new measures and understanding where they come from quite difficult. So let's see if we can automate and in one go organize them all into folders. To do that, you gotta come here to the semantic model folder, tables, and look for the table that hosts all of the measures you want to organize. So in my case, it is one, actuals and budgets. Next, we'll want to type this following prompt. Come into 𝗏GPT. So I'm going to say revise these TMDL. So we need to provide some context to let the model know what the type of code it is, and assign any measures not inside the display folder to one that already exists. And I'm then also saying it has to figure out by itself what that measure is to see what folder it needs to be put under. So if I copy that code again and pass that as the parameter. Okay, so this is the result. Let's insert the code, save the file, and we have to restart Power BI now. And you can see it here already. So it figured out all the measures that started with the actual belong to the actuals folder, and everything with the budgets belong to the budget folder. So if you imagine now a much more complex model with lots of measures and many more folders, this is a very fast way to organize your measures into the right folders. Another common occurrence with measures is that as time goes by, formats tend not to be applied consistently. And I show some examples of things that can happen quite frequently, where the decimal places are not consistent, some things are formatted with currency and some others are not. The thousand separator might be missing. So some things can happen quite often as the report grows. And to fix this, you come here to the formatting of the measure and change that one measure. That's quite a tedious process. So instead, you could come to the model view and select multiple measures, and in one go, you could find the format. However, if you have different rules for different types of measures, it is still quite a time-consuming process. So let's see if we can use AI to format these measures all in one go in a consistent manner. So to do that, we'll want to apply the following prompt. So I'm saying for the TMDL code, I'm going to provide Just format the actual cost as pound sterling, 0 decimal places, the hours as 1 decimal place and 1000 separator, and the budget as pound sterling, 1 decimal place. So I'm going to grab all of this code again. Now you could refer to the previous code we have here. I just found that copying the code from the file is always more reliable. So at the end of the day, this is still AI and it's more reliable to provide the code. So that's now complete. I will insert the code, save the file, and if we open Power BI again, let's see the results. And here we can see the results. So now the actuals have been formatted consistently. The budget has 1 decimal place, and so does the actual hours. One of the features of Copilot for Power BI is commenting measures and describing what they do and where they come from, which is quite useful for documentation. However, in the demos we've seen, it looked like you had to do that for each individual measure, which could be quite time consuming. So let's see if we can automate that process with AI. So coming back to VS Code, I'm going to provide this prompt, which is requiring that it comments the TMDL code. But notice here that I'm also explaining how commenting works. And that is a good idea because don't forget that ChatGPT is only as good as the data used to train it. And TMDL is a relatively recent language. So in this case, I'm actually helping ChatGPT understand how to do the task correctly. Let's grab more code and then pass that as a request. And once that completes, let's insert the code, save the file and reopen Power BI. And if we open now the measures and I hover over them, you can see each one will have a comment which wasn't here before. And this was all done in one go. And the great thing is it now becomes part of the metadata of this Power BI file. The final case study can be quite powerful if you're using SVG for your icons or other visual elements in the reports. Where possible, you should always use SVG because they can scale without losing quality and they are more customizable than file formats like PNG or JPEG. So let's suppose we want to customize this home icon on this button here. So one approach could be that you write a dynamic measure and you pass the color as a variable. And I have explained how that technique works on the different posts. So you can see here that you can make everything dynamic and the report can be customized in real time, as you can see there. But the problem with this is if you have a big report and too many visual elements on the page, this can become quite slow. So the best solution would be to change the Power BI project instead of changing things on the fly. So let's see how we can do that. So if we go back to VS Code, we want to navigate to a different part of the project now. So on the report folder, static resources, register resources, these are all the images for backgrounds and icons that I'm using on the reports. And I happen to know that that home icon is this file right here. So that's the code I'm going to need in a second. And let's pass a prompt that says the following. So for the SVG code we're going to provide, I'm saying that it's a house and it's used in a button. And then I'm asking two things for ChatGPT to change the image and add a window to that house. So quite a complex request. And on top of that, change the color to be in red tones. So this is quite a complex request that requires that ChatGPT understands what this SVG is. Let's see if that is possible. So that's now complete. Let's insert the code, save and restart Power BI. And here's the final results. It's quite impressive that it's both changed the color and added elements to this SVG that were not there before. So very, very impressive that you can do this without any image editor. And there you have it, 5 practical applications on using artificial intelligence to improve your BI workflow. So as a recap, we looked at rearranging the data model, commenting measures, formatting those measures, documenting them, and finally changing visual elements automatically without the help of any image editor.